Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast, episode 53 with Charlie and Justin. And my man, we are officially on to season 2, I guess, for all intents and purposes, right?
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about, you and I, do we name it season 2 or do we just stick with the name? And we kind of cumulatively thought that it would be best to just leave it with, episode 53. Just continue with the episode name.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, I guess not the guys we're looking up to, so to speak, but the podcasts that we listen to, the ones I listen to for sure, they just keep going and going and going. Jocko, I think he's on like 200 something, and you got Joe Rogan, 1,500 episodes. The only way for me is to keep, I like that it shows credibility. Because if you're going 1,500 strong, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, that's a goal for us. Ultimately, let's see how high we can get that number.
Right.
And just continue to not only give podcasts in volume, but be a podcast in volume with improved quality over time.
Right, absolutely.
So, that's one thing that you and I, as we've kind of progressed through this, we've kind of been, I was thinking about this the other day, things that you and I do differently now than what we did before.
Right.
We reviewed a lot of how we've grown specifically to the podcast on episode 52, because it was our 1-year anniversary or whatever. And I thought about it, over the past week, how we've changed as far as content goes as well. I feel like when you and I first started, we kind of had a centralized theme that we wanted to talk about. Most of it was because we were note heavy, right? You and I have talked about that, about how we would sit down, we'd plan out all this stuff. You have a notebook, with lots of notes.
It's like a relic.
Yeah. At this point, it's almost like archaic because it seems like it was so far in the past. But we have that, and we took a lot of notes, so we'd focus on, okay, what is the theme of this episode?
Right.
And then I don't know when the turning point was for us, but it kind of morphed into, a discussion between you and I where we would just go off on these tangents. And sometimes, even if we had a predetermined idea of what we were going to discuss and how we were going to go about things, the discussion just kind of led it astray, and then we never really worked back to the original topic at hand.
Right. I think that's kind of the best way too. Before we always said we didn't want to be scripted. We didn't want to write down what we were going to talk about exactly word for word, but it almost felt like semi-scripted in the beginning.
Well, of course, because we had these talking points and these notes that we wanted to kind of fit all this in. And then we didn't really have a good feel, at least I didn't, admittedly. I didn't have a good feel for the time.
Yeah.
Because, we wanted to try to get it in about 45 minutes, thereabouts, give or take. And it was hard for me to pace through things based on our notes. So we would have this, this litany of notes that we had to go through. And sometimes we would cover it too quickly, or other times we wouldn't even get through half of it before the allotted time was, expired. So we tried to kind of not really think about the time. And then as we got better, I feel like we kind of improved to know, exactly where that 45-minute mark is, because we don't want to, inundate people with these super lengthy episodes where it's too much to think about or too much to digest or too long to listen to. So we try to make them pretty concise, but thorough at the same time. I know that kind of sounds like a paradox, but we make them short enough for people to be able to listen to, preferably in one sitting, but long enough to where we try to give a little bit of value within that scope too.
Yeah, I think that was the best description of what we do.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have added anything else onto that to make it sound any better. And
ironically enough, we talked about how nowadays we don't really come up with a fundamental topic that we want to talk about unless we have a guest. Obviously, there's certain discussion points that you want to hit based on that person's life or the value that we think that they can share with the listeners, where, now you and I just kind of go hey, man, let's just hit the ground running and start talking, and hopefully the product comes out, with a lot of value to provide the listeners with. But the ironic part, as I mentioned, was that today we actually brought up a specific topic that we thought might be a good discussion point. So you and I talked, and this was your idea, about, leading by example, and sometimes there's hypocrisy within leadership.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. It was kind of funny. I scrolling through TikTok for a real quick down moment at work. And the first video that popped up was what triggered it. And it was, paraphrase real quick, basically, a subordinate and a dominant leader in a work environment the dominant guy didn't want to listen to the guy that wasn't talking to him with like respect and standing at attention and hitting all these points. But then when he turned around and went to talk to his boss, he was like relaxed and cool. And the guy's like, wait a minute, you want me to do it, but you won't do it, so back off. And I was thinking, like, well, that's like a prime example of leading by example. But what is the example we want to lead by? That was what I was thinking, like, as far as, like, how do you come up with the example to lead by? Mm-hmm. So, like, where do you set that bar? Who sets the precedent?
And I think that it's kind of a natural discussion point flowing from what we talked about in previous episodes, very recently, in fact. In previous episodes, you and I have talked about how we want to show by our actions what's important to us.
Right.
So, like, in the gym setting, that was, an analogy that I brought up that is pretty relevant to me and probably a lot of our listeners as well, mm-hmm. is when I work out, when I train, it's pretty serious, or at least I try to make it as serious as I can. And people they're more respectful of my time in the gym as far as when I'm training, because they see how aggressively I'm training or how hard I'm training. And likewise, when I have clients, they're more respectful of my time with clients when I'm working with someone, because they see that I'm very invested. Mm-hmm. I'm an active listener when my client's giving me feedback. I don't know if I want to use the term motivating, but I communicate a lot during the training session, pushing them as we go and stuff, and explaining why we're doing certain exercises and certain movements or whatever. So when you set the bar for a high standard of self, people kind of respect that, and then they see what's important to you.
Right.
So this is kind of a natural segue into that.
Absolutely.
Because some people can walk the walk sometimes, but they're not walking the walk all the time. Or even worse, some people who just talk the talk and don't walk the walk at all. There's definitely hypocrisy in there. And that was kind of something that you and I initially kind of put out to people from the beginning of the podcast, in its infancy stages, is we don't want to come across as hypocrites. So this is not us being preachy in any way, shape, or form with what we do.
I can remember, I think it was probably episode 1, 2, or 3, getting a text message from you. You know what? Actually, I think it was 8 or 9, because we released after we had 7 out. And you said, right after we released the first episode, you had sent me a text message and says, all eyes are on us. We have to lead by example and live by this standard.
Yeah.
It was, I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly, but I wish I would have taken like a screenshot of that, because I have a feeling that text message is going to be framed and in a quote on our wall in our studio at some point in life.
And you get to that point too with everything, where as you begin to build a reputation, it's almost like now inevitable, or like an inevitable requirement that you have to live up to that reputation. So if I have a reputation of being a nutrition coach, which I do, it would behoove me to market myself accordingly and behave as such. Right. Because if I'm out eating fast food all the time, and people say, well, who the heck is this guy to tell me how to eat well and what to do to optimize my health and optimize my physique and optimize my performance, but then he's going to eat fast food all the time.
Right.
So I kind of have to live by that standard. Right. Likewise with being a teacher. I preach about how important it is to be punctual, how important it is to be diligent with your work, how important it is to conduct yourself professionally, how important it is to invest yourself in education. So I kind of have to go about those same things myself, because I have, a classroom full of 30 young pairs of eyes looking to me to be that example. So I think that regardless of what you do, it's always important to, number one, do it correctly, because it's going to show that you're passionate about it. But number two, do it correctly, because then you're not going to come across as hypocritical with anything you do. Right. So like when you and I talk about like the standards of success, or like our success principles, or where we hold ourselves accountable, whether it's like, financial success, professional success, recreational success, whatever. I think it's important to make sure that we do that too, so everybody can say, hey, those guys are leading by example and they're practicing what they preach, because it's going to make your words a little bit more, it's going to hold more validity then, I think.
Right, absolutely. That's actually funny. You said, the success topic. I felt a little bit of success today. So I don't know. I can't remember if I talked about my chickens or not on the podcast before.
We have briefly. Yeah. I don't think we went too thoroughly with it, but
it's not a huge thing that I don't think it's like hugely relevant to the podcast, but it kind of is. It's a goal of mine has always been some self-sufficiency and being able to do things for myself without having to rely on a store. So I have recently decided to start raising chickens, and so maybe in hopes to provide meat and eggs for my family. Well, for about almost 6 months now, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for them first eggs, and I felt a little success today because I found 3 eggs in my chicken coop. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, but
and with that, talking about the success and stuff, I think that anything you do in life, you should try to set that example, because then people are gonna follow it. You
right.
know? And like when we first started it, it was when I sent you that text, because I don't recall sending you the specific text, but I definitely have recollection of thinking that and talking to you in person about that when we released this podcast. Like, hey, dude, we're going to talk to people and we're going to release this podcast about how important it is to be successful.
Right.
Now, as we do that, people aren't going to want to take advice from 2 people who aren't successful. Now, we've been pretty adamant and pretty upfront from the beginning that the success advice isn't coming from us. It's coming from, our guests that we have on. But I still feel like you and I can shed a little bit of light on things that we've found can bring success into our lives.
Yeah. Especially in the areas that we focus on.
Sure.
I mean, with you, you have I think the word, I've heard you use it a few times, a litany of topics that you cover on a daily basis with health and fitness, dietary needs for people, and then the kids that you make an impact on is incredible.
Well, I appreciate that.
But with me, it's, weight loss, I've done it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm recently, it's not until recently that I've actually really, really trying to accept that I have done some. You know what I mean? I have had some success with weight loss. It's hard for me because I suffer some from, I think it's called body dysmorphia, where I don't realize it a lot, but I'm working on it.
I think that's just natural for people to be dismissive of successes because it keeps you hungry.
Yes.
Which is a good thing. I mean,
yeah,
because there have been times when, let's use weight loss, for example. There's plenty of people out there who have, and some of them may be listening right now, where they've lost a lot of weight, got comfortable, got satisfied, and, felt great about themselves.
I've been that guy.
And then they stop. And then it's very, very hard. Once the snowball rolling down the hill loses momentum and gets real big, it's very, very hard to get it started to push it back down again.
That is an incredible analogy I've never heard.
So, and I've used this analogy before when things are going well, like contest prep for a bodybuilding show, for example. I've always used this analogy with people where I say it's like a snowball. Like, the faster you roll the snowball down the hill, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and faster and faster and faster as momentum carries it. So when I get down to the later stages in prep, I have less food, a lot less food. I'm doing a lot more cardio. I'm sleeping a lot less. And you have all these things working against you because your body is getting so far away from homeostasis and where it wants to be. But I feel like I'm the most energized mentally and spiritually and emotionally at that point, because like I have so much emotional momentum going into this. Like, 'cause I'm looking better, I feel worse, but like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I do. Well, when that snowball gets stopped, it's like really hard to start pushing it and get it going again.
Right. I agree.
I think that's kind of why we've talked about in the past, and we're talking about now, about people are going to want to listen to us again if we're not leading by example. So like when you give tips with weight loss, it's one thing to say, I did it, but it's probably more important, I would think, to our listeners to say, I did it and I'm continuing to do it and I'm going to keep doing it, or whatever.
Right.
It would be like me, like as a personal trainer, it's one thing to say, hey, I've been in shape before, I've done all this. However, it's a lot more important for me to be in shape the whole time, because then they can look at me and say, hey, it hasn't been 20 years since I've done this. I worked out this morning. I've trained this morning. So I know exactly what you're going through, or whatever. And that's kind of like, I've talked about it with football, for example. That's something that when I was coaching football was really, really big for me to elicit buy-in from the players, is every now and then I would do what they do, even like the brutally hard conditioning. Like I would do some of it with them to show them, hey guys, like I know what it's like to go through what you're going through right now.
Right. Well, that's like, whenever I had talked to you and Johnny about possibly coming in a wrestling room and and maybe rolling around with the heavyweights or the upper weight class kids because I have experience there, and I really really thoroughly enjoy being in that environment. But I refuse. I still, I mean, I'm in the best shape of my adult life, and I still refuse to do that because I want to make sure that I can lead by example. And whenever they're running, I want to be running. Whenever they're sweating and dying, I want to be sweating and dying.
Yep.
And so that's why it's like I really like that when you told me that with your kids you run with them or you do the sprints, the hard stuff that most coaches stand by and cut it up with each other while the kids are killing themselves. You're out there actually doing it with them.
And like one thing I started doing was I have a speed group, for lack of a better phrase, every Sunday morning. So Sundays, I would say, I obviously have no days off, but Sundays are as close to a day off as I have because my training load is pretty light. Email traffic that I get from online clients is pretty low. I don't have a ton of people that do check-ins on Sundays. So it's really as close to a day off at this point in my life as I would get. And I get up at 8 a.m. Well, the gym opens at 8 a.m. So we meet right when the gym opens and we do like kind of like a movement circuit. It's a lot of movement development. So what we'll do is we'll do probably about a half hour warm up with an extra 15 minutes of mobility work. So it's very, very thorough as far as functional movement pattern establishment goes. And then we'll go into like some speed work, either lateral speed or linear speed or some different plyometric progression. So it's basically just athletic training.
Yeah.
And I've started more and more over the course of the past couple of weeks is doing more with the kids myself. Not only does it benefit me from an athletic standpoint, but then of course, like I can show that, hey guys, I can still do this too. So I know exactly how to cue. I know exactly, like, I'm not going to demand too much of you because, look, I can do it. So then,
right,
in essence, you should be able to do it as well.
Right.
And you just get buy-in from people.
I love it.
I mean, you get buy-in from clients, and you can kind of, parallel that to any facet of life. No matter what you're doing, if you're doing it also, people are going to be a lot more willing to listen to you.
Right. And it's crazy. So I watch all of your training clips that you post on Instagram with all your kids and all your clients that you're working with. All of which, but maybe one, I don't know, because it's been so long since I've moved gyms and been all across town. But I can recite and remember time and place where we have done the same movement. So it's like the habit that you have formed with your training and the way you train people. It's solid, man.
Well, thank you.
It is.
And like I told you, man, that's one way to get buy-in from me was to show that I know what I'm talking about and not just say that I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's
like when a guy like Dr. Ryan buys in and is pushing you the way he is, there's a reason for it.
No, thank you. Thank you.
But
I think that, like you said initially to start off the show, I think that it was a good talking point because there's always that period of, we're always reflective. I think you and I both do a good job of this. Is you and I do a pretty good job of looking and being truthful with ourselves.
Right.
So like I know when I'm not leading by example as well as I could be. And then I try to self-correct and adjust.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been my whole shtick from, at least the last couple years when I've really aimed at being successful. So like I kind of had like a midlife crisis, and I've been pretty open about this when I turned 30. I don't know why. But like last year when I turned 30, it was like this weird thing for me where I just felt like even in your 20s, you're still considered a kid. It's like, okay, you're no longer a kid now. Like you're older. And I've like really, really been adamant about improving all facets of my life. And one of the things that naturally came along with that was always self-assessing. Like we've talked in previous episodes about like the alarm thing, setting an alarm for every hour to see if you're on track to accomplish your goals for the day or not. And I've been like very, very open with myself lately as far as how good I am at certain things and what I can do to be better at them.
Right.
And holding myself accountable for that because it's hard to do because like you can convince yourself of anything, so it's very hard. It's hard for me to say, are you truly leading by example or are you just leading by example when people are watching? Because that's important too. Something that comes to mind along those lines is my old high school locker room. We have like a multi-story sports complex where I went to high school, and we have a very, very large locker room and at our football field. And I don't know if it's still there, but at one point there were huge letters on the side of the locker room wall that read, "Champions are made when no one is watching."
I like that.
And that was kind of something that we always preached here. We always were taught by our coaches, and kind of like our community was, anybody can perform when the lights are on, but who's going to perform and shine the brightest are the ones that working when there is no light behind closed doors. Who's grinding in the weight room? Who's eating the right things at dinner? Who's, keeping up with their academics in the classroom? Who's going to all the off-season trainings, like all that sort of stuff. And so, like, it's one thing to say, like, I know people, and this is common. Like, there's people that only are champions when others are watching or when other people are looking. So, like, I can anybody can pack chicken, rice, and vegetables into the gym and say, "Oh, look at me! I'm eating my meals out of Tupperware. I'm living the bodybuilder lifestyle." And then the minute they go home, they're stopping through the drive-through before they go.
Right.
So I think that's a very common issue. Is you have to be honest with yourself at all times, not when it's just convenient for you to be honest with yourself.
That's an awesome point. Like an absolutely. I didn't even think about going that direction when this topic came up, but that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people that do a weight loss journey, myself included, the 175 times that I tried before, would do the same thing. We talked about it in the 2 or 3 episodes where I kind of told my whole story, where people doing that will tell their coworkers or their family, "Yeah, I'm losing weight, I'm dieting, I'm down a few pounds." And realistically, they have that hand behind their back with the cheeseburger and the French fries in the bag, but you're standing in front of them and they're telling you this thing, but they're actually doing that thing. They're waiting for you to walk away so they can eat that food.
And there's definitely some comedic irony there too, and I say comedic because it makes me laugh about how you and I talked about using social media as a platform to elicit some more accountability, right? Like posting updated pictures or posting us like training and showing like, hey, yes, we are getting stronger. Hey, yes, we are losing fat, or hey, yes, we are gaining muscle or whatever, because you can put it out there for people to see. And it's nice when people see the training videos and stuff, because it shows that like, hey, we're actually holding ourselves accountable to a high standard because we have to. However, the irony comes from the fact that I think that social media is a huge offender of that.
Yes.
Because you can actually show the illusion of progress because you're only posting what you want people to see. And people post like these clips or I know a ton of people who post old pictures of themselves and they try to, kind of, I guess, pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak, because it's an older picture.
Right.
And it's not actually what they look like right now and stuff. Like I post older pictures. Yeah, sure. Like I post older pictures, but I actually try to tell people, hey, this is an older picture or a throwback, or I include the date with it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think that social media can actually make it worse because people will only show you what they want you to see.
Right. And I think as today's, the age of technology is a double-edged sword. You can proclaim that you're leading by example just because of the technological advances we have technically.
Yeah.
And then realistically, it's easy to hide what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we talked about posting our workouts and stuff over and over and over again. We talked about it all the time. And I was really, really good at it for a long time. I was at every day. I take a couple quick videos while we're working out, and I'd always post all my sets, reps, what I wanted to do.
You were real good at it, and even me, who wasn't good at it, was a lot better than I was before.
Right.
Like I was actually posting training clips, and that was very short-lived, and it only lasted for a little while. And I really have no excuse for that. I just don't like posting them. It's tedious for me. I know this is silly because it requires no extra effort on my part to hand my phone to my training partner and say, record me. And I don't know if it's because I'm like anti-establishment and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I want to focus. But I haven't been doing it.
Yeah,
but you were real good with it. Real good.
I quit doing it for a reason though. I quit doing it because I felt like I was being, it's kind of like hypocritical here actually, because we talk about your workout. You're like you said, like when our update every week when we do these podcasts and we talk about how the gym's been, yours is almost always More of the same.
Yeah.
It's more of the same because the same's working and I'm making progress and it's happening.
Uh-huh.
Well, my workout is always the same. I do the same movements every day in, day out, on the same times. You know what I mean? So I felt like I felt like people were getting sick of seeing the same thing over and over and over again. So I kind of tried to move more into who I am.
Yeah.
And that the positivity stuff where, you know, I even started getting kind of pulled into the politics for a while where right around the election, you know, people have differing opinions and it seems like this country, you know, right now we have a problem where if you have a different opinion than me, we're not allowed to be friends or something. I don't understand it, but I almost bought into it for a second and I decided I'm not doing that anymore. So I moved away from posting the training clips so much and more of like I'm quoting people. I'm trying to quote like, you know, our guests, you know, like once in a while I'll quote Johnny where I'll say I'm proud of you and I'm just talking about everybody, like literally everybody. And that's just kind of like what I've been doing. So, but I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent there. The reason I started that was I got away from it and I actually was talking to a really super good friend of mine and my wife's. And we haven't talked for a while. And she actually said, well, I wasn't sure if you were still working out or not. And I was taken aback, like, what are you talking about? Like, this is a 7-day-a-week thing for me.
Uh-huh.
How do you not know I'm not working out? And it instantly was like a culture shock. Like, wait a minute, dude. You said you were going to use this as accountability, and this is how you were going to lead by example. And now it's showing that you're not holding up your end of the deal because people don't know. Other than me doing push-ups or posting a picture of my Strava for going for a walk, you don't know what I'm doing.
And that's interesting because herein lies the paradox of the whole social media thing is you have some people who use it as an accountability tool and people assume that if you're not posting it, you're not doing anything. Whereas you could be really working like the saying we talked about, champions are made when no one is watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be doing things behind closed doors. Just because you don't post about it on social media doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Yeah, because a lot of times I get into a funk where I don't want to post so much on social media because I feel braggy. Like, look at me. I worked 14 hours today, and then I went and did 2 hours, or I went to the gym for an hour this morning, and then I worked 14 hours, and then I worked in my yard and worked on my house. Look at me, all the time management skills I have. I'm not trying to brag.
And sometimes I think that people are intelligent enough to be able to sift through and decipher, you know, what's genuine and then what's disingenuous too.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can pretty, I think for the most part, people, at least, I don't know, maybe I can decipher between the people that are being genuine and the people that like it's a facade. They just want to give the illusion of hard work or effort or whatever. And you know, you have that same thing, and it's kind of like human nature, almost, is working for the wrong reasons. And like so, like one thing that I've said that I never want to be is because there's people out there that care so much about looking successful instead of being successful, and there's a huge difference. And the reason I say that it starts from an early age is because like when you're playing sports and the coach looks at you and you see the coach is watching, you give a ton more effort. And then when the coach turns his back, you don't have to run as hard or lift as heavy or whatever, or practice as hard. And it's a shame because the reason you're practicing should be for you.
Right.
You should be doing this as an opportunity to get better. Every day, when some of my clients come to me, and two stick out in particular because I get very excited and enthusiastic when I talk to them about it, is I have two twins that I train, and they're elite level softball girls. And every time when they come into the gym, I always like joke around with them because, you know, when they first start off with like their warm up, like I always do something like metabolic and like trying to get their heart rate elevated and like literally warm up, like elevate core body temperature. So I'll have them just do like Stairmaster or something for a little bit before we do our actual like dynamic work and mobility work. But when they get on the Stairmaster, they get in the treadmill, they're like, oh, I'm tired or I don't want to do this. And I always joke with them to try to like get them enthusiastic. I say, you should be thankful to be here because this is an opportunity to get better.
Right.
Every time you come in here, it's an opportunity to get better. So it's actually kind of a shame that people don't always look at like that. And they always look to like, oh, I want to impress the coach. But I'm not really concerned with giving 100% effort when he's not looking.
Right.
And so that's where you can really discern between the good and the great, because the good people are going to give effort when people are watching. The bad people won't give effort anytime, and the truly great people are going to give effort, regardless of if they have social media or not. Like, believe it or not, like, you can actually be in really good shape and go to the gym every day and be like a world-class athlete and not boast about it on social media.
Absolutely.
There's people doing it.
Well, that's why I started the 3 o'clock in the morning thing. I mean, that was one of the main reasons why I started going to the gym at 3 a.m. was, A, there's nobody around to see me doing it. So then that was the other thing, right? I started doing this so I didn't have to deal with people talking to me. And I don't mean I don't want people to talk to me, but I didn't have to deal with the people staring at the biggest guy in the room, but he's working hard.
And it just detracts from the task at hand.
Right. At 3 o'clock in the morning, there's me, my training partner or partners, and the old guy that is always there. I don't even know his name, but he's awesome. He's incredible. But I don't have to worry about somebody asking my story, even though I don't mind telling it when it's genuine. When somebody asks me genuinely how I did it or what I did, I'm all about it. I'll tell you every time.
Yeah.
But at 3 a.m., there's 3 of us in the gym.
Of course.
So, but I make it a point, like you said, the focused intensity on the workout is there. Like if it's not there, why am I getting myself out of bed to come do it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my way, I think, to come back full circle here is to lead by example. Is I go to failure every chance I get. I try to lead by example in that way, meaning if I'm gonna do a push day, I'm gonna do a push day, and I'm gonna make it worth it, and I'm gonna make it count. And that's why we were talking earlier, where it's like sometimes with my schedule, how I only have an hour. Is it beneficial to do a half hour of strength training and a half hour cardio, or is it more beneficial for me to say, you know what, let's take the ego and set it aside, not do strength training for a while, and only focus on back to the roots, which is kind of the theme of my journey right now, is getting back to my roots, doing cardio, watching what I'm eating exactly to a point, and lose weight.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where I'm at now, is like, I'm ready to start sprinkling in more strength training, but right now I need to get back all the way back on the horse and keep up the cardio.
And I think that that's a good talking point for when we come back, is the natural transition of goals. And I also want to touch on how people are going to be able to stay accountable when no one's watching, because I think that we brought that up. So we have to kind of maybe provide some insights on how to follow through with making sure that you're giving your best effort even when no one's holding you accountable with their eyes. We'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that stuff. As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram, and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well. All right, we are back. So before we took our commercial break, we wanted to bring up some suggestions about how people can be motivated to lead by example, even when they're not directly in front of someone setting the example. Because let's be honest, dude, eyes are a huge motivator.
Yeah.
Like when someone's watching you, you're going to give more effort to something, especially if it's something that you're passionate about and want people to recognize that passion.
I think you kind of just stole my thunder there, because that was what I was going to say. And you didn't know that, but I mean, that's what I was going to say. And basically, if you want to lead by example, meaning that in itself means that you're passionate about what you're doing. So if you have a passion for your job or the field that you're training in, do it to your absolute best, and you will lead by example.
Yeah. Because realistically, is it really something that you're passionate about if you're only doing it when people are around?
Right. No.
So take being a part-time bodybuilder or a full-time bodybuilder. You want to call yourself a bodybuilder are you really a bodybuilder if you're only eating what you're supposed to be eating and training the way you're supposed to be training when people are watching you?
Right.
Whereas when you're alone at your home or doing, whatever, or training at a gym when it's empty, like, are you doing the things? Are you holding yourself to the same standard that you were previously?
Right.
So
are you the guy that improvised when the gym shut down?
Yeah.
Or are you the guy that said, you know what, as soon as they come back online, I'm going to start going back to the gym and it's all going to be good. I'm still a bodybuilder.
I brought this up before on previous episodes. Never went into too great of detail or too profound of detail because I don't have the piece in front of me. But one time I wrote a piece about need versus want. And I talked about how, in my estimation, the people that I've networked with and the people that I've met and the people that I've seen, it appears that an overwhelming majority of highly successful people need to be successful. It's not that they want to be successful.
Right.
It's almost like they need the success as much as they need oxygen or food or shelter to survive. So I think that if you're able to turn the dial down and not really live the lifestyle when the lights are off and no one's watching you, I think that you may need to, honestly, man, I don't even know if you need to find a way to turn the dial up. You may just need to find a different radio completely.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's not for you. So if you want to be a bodybuilder and you constantly are looking for motivation to do the right thing when no one's watching, maybe bodybuilding's not for you. And I'm just using that as a simple example because it's something I'm familiar with.
And we could talk about me all day on that. I started losing weight and I've had I'm going to use one of your words again. I've had a litany of things that I wanted to be, and I've chased after since this journey started. I mean, in the very beginning, endurance athlete is something that has stuck around because I don't think that's ever going to go away because it's a dream to be able to do something that was literally never possible. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to happen. But specifically triathlon. I was something that, it has to happen for me. It had to happen. I did it. I loved it. It was fun, but I found that I like bodybuilding more. Uh-huh. And then in the midst of liking bodybuilding more, I think I kind of deviated into the powerlifting area.
Yeah.
And then now back to the bodybuilding and now back to the cardio. So I don't think you shouldn't say, don't go 100% into something until you're ready to be 100%, right?
Yeah.
And that's somewhere I kind of have had downfalls or setbacks, and not really setbacks, but my downfall is I go 100% head over heels into whatever it is I'm doing. I don't give myself the chance to try this, try that, try this, find what I like, because that's how I lost the weight. Was I just jumped in with both feet and learned how to swim.
And sometimes maybe that's the best way to go about it because you can sit there and crunch the numbers and look into the analytics mm-hmm. and say, well, I think I might like this more, but maybe I'll like this more. Let me think about this. Really, the only way you're going to truly know what you're passionate about is to do it and to try.
Right.
And then it's really kind of a foolproof way to quantify what you really like is whatever sticks around the longest.
Mm-hmm. It was a struggle for me right in the beginning because one of the first things I said on here is I will do an Ironman. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I have to stick to. I don't know when, but it's still going to happen eventually. But it was the irony there was it's been hard for me to even bring that back up because I feel like I failed that already because we put a timeline on it, and that timeline's come and gone. Mm-hmm. But that was just me aiming for the shooting for the stars.
Yeah.
Aim high and see what falls from it.
Yeah.
But I don't know where I was going with that now. But it was being able to be okay with the change of direction as long as, like we talked about before, you bring it up a lot, giving time for your direction to show itself.
Yeah.
So if, I started in triathlon, I finished what I started when I started that training block. I did the triathlon, I did the race, and I really did enjoy it. The training was awesome. I felt great until the race, and then it broke me. So
quite literally.
That's right. Yeah, quite literally, it actually broke me. Like I'm still kind of recovering from it, but I loved it. I mean, the feeling was what I was searching for. Where before I started losing weight, I could barely walk. Um, a normal 8 to 12 hour day at work for me was a normal day was brutal. By the time I finally completed my triathlon, I was working a 14-hour day and had 2 hours, 3 hours of training after work or before work to get that accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I did it. Like, I've come full circle. And I don't want to say I've arrived because I'm still 300 plus pounds, right? But I'm doing what I said I was going to do. And I haven't been able to accept that.
And I think that's the way, again, to find your passion is, I mentioned on another episode that I was always told from a very young age is never give up on something you can't go a day without thinking about.
Absolutely.
So, like, if you keep coming back to this, endurance stuff or just weight loss in general, because realistically, man, your goals, you can say, I went the route of endurance sports and then I got attracted to potentially bodybuilding and then powerlifting. I mean, let's be honest, those are all three goals that are very, very similar.
Yeah.
And they're going to require a similar path right now for you.
Yeah.
So when you're over 300 pounds, if you want to be a powerlifter, you want to be a bodybuilder, you want to be an endurance athlete, all three of those are predicated on foremost losing more body weight and fat, and then secondarily gaining more muscle. So, I mean, they're really kind of the same goal. Yeah. So, like, I mean, they're not, but they are.
Well, it's a blanket goal. Like, yeah. I mean, the blanket itself is the healthier lifestyle and a longer life to be able to find the right goal and achieve it.
So if you're having trouble, I mean, that's pretty much to come full circle again with this is if you're finding trouble doing things that you need to be doing when you're not in public eye, then you may need to change goals because I don't think that, again, it goes back to, like I said earlier, about want versus need. Mm-hmm. I don't think that, well, I know, I shouldn't say I don't think, but I know that, like, Michael Jordan is shooting or was shooting thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of shots when no one was watching him.
Right.
In an empty gym every day, over and over and over again.
Shot until he hated the sound of a basketball.
Yeah. And I don't think that there's any coincidence that those types of people have the most success.
Right.
No one has to give Michael Jordan a self-help speech or a motivational speech about doing those things.
Right.
He does them because he's that truly passionate about it. So initially I thought, let's give people some advice on how they can navigate through their off time when no one's looking to be successful. But then I think you shouldn't really need that. Mm-mm. If you're truly invested in your passion, right? So maybe change what you think your passion is.
I think it's change what you think your passion is. Make sure you're passionate about what is actually. Make sure that you are acting like you're passionate about the things that you're actually passionate about.
Yeah. Like, can I please interrupt you with bodybuilding, dude? That's so true. I see it all the time with bodybuilding is people want to get on stage and they want to post pictures of them shredded. Like, people love, like, the six-pack pictures, or people want to say, I want to compete. I want to compete. I've had people that have wanted to compete and have worked with me for a month and can't handle the diet. And I'm talking a very lenient with relatively limited structure compared to what they're going to need on an actual contest prep scenario. But they just can't do it. Right. And they just want they want the success or the allure of what it looks like to be a bodybuilder.
They want to put that cart before the horse.
Yeah, you don't want to be a bodybuilder. If you don't want to eat the same things multiple times a day over and over again and go to the gym and do cardio for years and years and years and years, and you aren't obsessed with monotony and repetition and just the robotic process of everyday life, then you don't want to be a bodybuilder. Right. You want to look like a bodybuilder, but you don't want to be one.
You want to have a beach body.
Exactly. And
which there's nothing wrong with.
No, absolutely not.
Like, actually, you encourage it.
I tell people all the time, don't become a bodybuilder. That is stupid. I don't want you to be a bodybuilder. When people come to me and say, hey, I want to compete, I want to be a bodybuilder, I'll say, you can't think of a better way to spend your time than doing this. Right. But that's coming from someone who's lived it, continues to live it, and probably forever live it.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to deter people from their goals. I just know what goes into it, and people who are new to the sport may not understand what goes into it.
And I guess don't be discouraged if you go all in. If you do, like Dr. Ryan had told me when we had him on, have to be all in. You have to be all in, be invested, and make that your priority, your reality. On the flip side, if you get all in on a single topic in your journey, if you get all in on becoming the boss of your firm or your company, or you get all in on becoming an elite level athlete, or losing over half your body weight, or whatever, I'm trying to put it on every aspect of life. But if you jump all in and you decide 6 months, a year later, I'm wore out and I don't want to do this anymore, don't quit being all in. Just decide what you want to be all in on.
Yeah.
Right. Start doing the research on what makes you happy,
Mm-hmm.
and then be all in on what makes you happy. Because I think running with that topic with what Dr. Ryan told me was that being all in is a necessity to success in life. Whatever you do, just jump in all in. Like you said prior, numerous episodes before, you've said, when I'm recording a podcast, I'm all in the Chasing Dreams podcast. When I'm training Justin in the gym, I am all in training Justin in the gym. When I am training the softball twins, I am all in training them at that moment.
I try to be very honed in to whatever I'm doing and not let my mind wander to other things. So I try to always be very present, because that's going to yield the best results.
Right.
Like if I'm training someone and I'm fully invested mentally in them, they're going to reap the benefits, because I'm going to bring energy to the training session. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bring knowledge to the training session. I'm going to be very engaged, and therefore they're likely going to reciprocate that.
Right.
They're going to reciprocate it with energy. They're going to reciprocate it with focus, and they're going to reciprocate it with good intentions and good communication and good effort. So I think that that's something that I've really tried to focus on lately, because I have so many things going on that it's really easy for me to get off base.
Right.
Like when so take yesterday, for example, I wake up at 3:30 and get all my meals prepped and get to the gym to train legs. Like right when I was actually there before the gym opened, about like 4:45 in the morning, ready to train legs. And it would be very easy for me during that leg training session to think about the full day of school I had ahead. Mm-hmm. And then immediately after school, wrestling practice for 2 hours. And then immediately after wrestling practice, I had to go to the gym and train 3 or 4 clients. And then immediately after those clients, I had to go back home and finish all my client updates on my computer through email. So it's like I have so many things to go on in my life that it'd be very easy for me to lose focus on what I'm doing now. And when I'm training in the gym, lifting legs first thing in the morning, if I'm thinking about school, my leg workout's going to suffer.
Yep.
And if I'm in school thinking about wrestling practice after school, my teaching and my kids are going to suffer. And then if I get to wrestling practice and if I'm always focused on the next step, what I'm doing now sucks.
Yeah.
And so I constantly...
The whole day is going to suck.
Yeah. I don't win the day unless I'm very focused on what I do now. So that's something that I've really been like super, super adamant on, that I've learned about myself, is I need to be hyper-focused on right now. What am I doing right now? That's it. I wrote a piece on this as well on the Redcon One website. I said it's called Micromanaging Your Way to Success. So how you can micromanage and focus on very minute details of what you're doing, and the long term's going to eventually engender itself because of that. So like we talk about short-term goals. Yeah. Like I am largely in favor of short-term goals.
Yeah, you just messaged me about it on my update last
that's
week.
True. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I said, hey, let's get back to, because that was something that you and I both shared with each other, is what our short-term goals were. Right. We would do that every week, sometimes multiple times a week.
Yeah.
And I feel like you and I, for whatever reason, have just drifted away from that a little bit. So let's go back to it. Set short-term goals, because that's something that's going to,
it works.
Yeah, I mean, you can set a long-term goal and never get there.
Right.
But if you set short-term goals, you're going to get to that long-term goal.
Right. Well, that's like, a good analogy for long-term or short-term goals, right? If you set out from Ohio in your car and you're not going to use the GPS, so you have to use a map because you don't know how to get to California without directions.
Yep.
If you grab a road atlas and you turn to the United States and you try to drive from Ohio to California with the United States page as one, you're never going to get there, because you have way too many roads and way too much to see all at once. You have to open Ohio's map find where you're at, map your trip across Ohio, and then you have to go to the next state and the next state and the next state. You have to micromanage.
And I think within that scope, it's important too to be honest with yourself.
Right.
So you want to set short-term goals. Like in school, in an educational setting, we always talk about SMART goals. Mm-hmm. So making them specific, making them measurable, making them, I don't even remember the analogy now, and I should because I'm a teacher, attainable, perhaps. I know the T is timely, so within a specific time. But regardless, when you're setting goals, you need to have specifics about them. You have to be realistic with your expectations. So, you could set a goal to lose 50 pounds in 2 weeks, but realistically, that's not going to happen. So that's not a very good goal. But it's important to be realistic with yourself, too, because you could undershoot it. Mm-hmm. You could say, whoa, in 2 weeks, I'm going to lose 1 pound. It's like, Justin.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. I would certainly hope that you did that today.
Yeah.
So, I think that it's important to not only have direction, but have some form of intelligence and self-honesty with your direction that you're going to go. Because I feel that can lose people too sometimes,
I can't say it better. And it's all this stuff we're talking about that, we keep bringing back up over and over and over again. It's so important. And I think the reason that it all comes back to the forefront is time management.
Yeah.
I know I sound like a broken record, but without time management, I would have never remodeled 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a laundry room, a roof, build a barn, a chicken coop, all in 6-8 months this year.
Yeah.
It just would have never happened.
Working full time.
Still
working out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Training, 7 days, 6 days a week. I've been taking Sundays off for active recovery. But it would have never happened. I would still be 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Without being able to manage my time. So that's I know I sound like a broken record and people are probably sick of, I bet you there's somebody out there with a poster board ticking off check marks every time I listen to our podcast, and I use the word time management.
Some college students could probably use that as a drinking game.
Yeah.
Every time you listen to the Chasing Dreams podcast and Charlie and Justin mention to some degree time management, take a shot.
Yeah. Somebody's drunk somewhere.
Yeah. And for the record, just to put that out there, I do not condone drinking or consuming alcoholic beverages, even if you are of age. So please do not do that.
Yes, it doesn't promote time management.
Yes, that is very true. So, man, I think we kind of wrapped it up there, just unintentionally, kind of naturally came to a close on our discussion. I feel like you and I had some pretty good dialogue to help me rethink through some things, and especially the overlying theme of the entire episode is, if you're going to lead by example, make sure that you lead by example all the time and not when it's just convenient.
Yeah.
So basically lead by example even when you're not outwardly the example.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I like it.
Because then when you do become the example and people are watching you, you're going to have a lot more of a leg to stand on, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, so with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast. This has been episode 53, and indirectly the introduction into season 2 with Charlie and Justin. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Please share this with a friend, and hopefully we will see you next week. Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge.